Hi, welcome. Enjoy the content, subscribe, and turn on notifications.
Patrick Morris had learned a lot during his 8 years as a Marine. He'd learned how to read people, how to spot threats before they materialized, how to stay calm under pressure. At 41, those skills now served a different life: a veterinary clinic in Portland, Oregon, a spacious suburban house, and a 12-year marriage to Claire, the woman he'd met at a college graduation party. Claire worked as a senior account manager at a digital marketing agency called Horizon Creative, a company that had grown rapidly over the past 5 years and now competed with the industry's biggest players. That Friday afternoon in October, Patrick was preparing a marinade for salmon when Claire came home earlier than usual. She seemed anxious, checking her phone repeatedly as she headed upstairs to change clothes. Evan Shaw, her marketing director, was coming over for dinner. Claire had mentioned the invitation the week before as something casual, a networking opportunity that could benefit her career. Patrick had agreed without giving it much thought. After all, professional dinners were common in Claire's corporate world. He occasionally hosted vendor reps or fellow veterinarians himself. But something about Claire's anxiety nagged at him. It wasn't the usual work-related nerves. It was different. She changed clothes 3 times before settling on a navy blouse and black pants, elegant but conservative. Patrick noticed she put on perfume, something she rarely did at home. Small details that started forming a pattern in his observation-trained mind. Evan Shaw arrived at 7:15 p.m., pulling up in a silver Tesla Model S that parked right in front of the garage, as if it were his reserved spot. Patrick opened the door to find a 28-year-old man with carefully slicked-back hair, a precisely trimmed beard, wearing dark jeans and a white linen shirt that probably cost more than Patrick's weekly salary. Evan extended his hand with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Patrick, right? I've heard a lot about you. Claire talks about you a lot." His voice carried that overconfident tone Patrick recognized from young officers who'd never actually been tested. "Evan. Come on in." Patrick shook his hand, too firmly, Evan noticed, quickly masking his discomfort with another smile. Claire appeared in the living room, and Patrick observed the immediate shift. Evan lit up, hugging Claire in a way that lasted 2 seconds longer than appropriate, his hands resting on her back before letting go. "Claire, you look stunning. That project we wrapped up yesterday really made you glow, didn't it?" Glow. The word echoed in Patrick's head as he closed the door. That wasn't the kind of compliment a professional boss would make. It was intimate. Personal. Dinner started with apparent normalcy. Patrick served appetizers, bruschetta and marinated olives, while Claire prepared drinks. Evan declined the craft beer Patrick offered, asking instead for sparkling water with a slice of Sicilian lemon, specifying it had to be Sicilian, not regular lime. Patrick bit back a sarcastic comment. During the meal, Evan completely dominated the conversation. He spoke about campaigns he was leading, his vision for Horizon Creative's future, how he was shaping promising talent at the company. Every sentence began with, I implemented, I decided, I transformed. Claire listened with an attention Patrick hadn't seen in months when he talked about the clinic. It hurt more than he expected. "You know, Patrick," Evan said, slicing his salmon with precise movements, "Claire is exceptional. Absolutely exceptional. We often work late, sometimes until 10 or 11, and she never complains. That kind of dedication is rare." He glanced at Claire with a smile Patrick could only describe as possessive. "Our professional chemistry is incredible. Sometimes we don't even need to speak, I know exactly what she's thinking." Patrick felt his jaw muscles tighten. "Until what exact time?" "Claire usually gets home around 8. "Oh, those special projects," Evan shrugged, lightly touching Claire's arm. "The ones that really matter. You know how it is, when you're building something big, conventional hours don't apply." Claire looked away, poking at her food. Patrick knew her well enough to recognize her discomfort. But was she uneasy about the situation, or about something she was hiding? The evening steadily worsened. Evan started acting as if he were the host. He got up to grab more wine from the kitchen without asking where it was. He adjusted the dining room thermostat because it was a bit stuffy. He chose the playlist on Claire's Spotify, remarking that he knew her musical tastes perfectly. Each gesture was a subtle invasion of Patrick's authority in his own home. When Claire went to the kitchen to get dessert, Evan leaned toward Patrick conspiratorially. "You're lucky, man. Women like Claire are rare, smart, ambitious, dedicated." He paused deliberately. "They need men who understand their needs, you know. Modern relationship dynamics are complex. It's not like it used to be." Patrick gripped his fork tightly enough to whiten his knuckles. The implication was clear: Patrick was old-fashioned, inadequate, not up to Claire's standards. This arrogant kid was sitting at his table, eating his food, and questioning his ability to be a good husband. "Evan," Patrick said in a low, controlled voice, "let's talk in my office. Just the two of us." Evan raised his eyebrows, amused. Sure. Man-to-man talk, right?" Patrick stood and walked down the hall to the office, knowing Evan would follow. The room was small, a sturdy oak desk, bookshelves full of veterinary medicine texts, framed diplomas on the walls, and a wedding day photo of Patrick and Claire. Evan entered with his hands in his pockets, surveying the room with an appraising gaze, as if calculating each item's resale value. Patrick closed the door and positioned himself between Evan and the exit. It wasn't threatening, just definitive. "Let's get a few things straight. First, you're 28. I'm 41. I served 8 years in the Marines, 3 of them in combat. You respect me. Second, you're in my house. My house, my rules, my authority. I'm in charge here. Third," Patrick stepped forward, locking eyes unflinchingly, "I don't like the way you talk to my wife. I don't like the way you look at her. I don't like the intimacy you assume you have with her." Evan didn't apologize. Instead, his smile widened, the smile of someone who thinks he holds all the cards. Patrick. I think you're misunderstanding things. Claire and I have a healthy professional relationship. We're close colleagues. In the modern corporate world, especially in digital marketing, we work collaboratively, creatively. There's affection, sure. Mutual respect. Admiration. He shoved his hands back in his pockets, far too relaxed for someone being confronted. Claire is brilliant. I just recognize that. Maybe in ways you can't. The implication hung in the air like toxic smoke. Patrick processed it quickly. Evan wasn't just crossing lines, he was deliberately erasing them, testing how far he could go. And most disturbingly, he genuinely seemed convinced he had some kind of entitlement to Claire's attention. "You've said enough." Patrick opened the office door. "Dinner's over. Please leave my house. Now." Evan didn't move. That'd be interesting." He tilted his head, studying Patrick like a curious specimen. "You know, Patrick, I'm not sure kicking your wife's boss out is the smartest move. Claire has a promising career at Horizon. Very promising. I directly oversee promotions in her department. Performance reviews. Growth opportunities." He let the words linger, making sure Patrick caught the veiled threat. It'd be a shame if something negatively affected that trajectory. Anger surged up Patrick's spine, hot and familiar. It was the same anger he felt at injustice, at the powerful abusing their position. But years of military training had taught him to channel anger into calculated action. "Leave," he repeated, this time with no trace of gentleness in his voice, "my house." Evan sighed dramatically, as if Patrick were an irrational child. "As you wish. But think about the consequences, Patrick. Think about what this means for Claire. He walked past Patrick and returned to the dining room, where Claire was bringing out dessert, a tiramisu she'd spent the afternoon preparing. "Claire, that was a wonderful dinner, but it seems your husband isn't feeling well." Evan picked up his coat from the couch. "We should go. Thanks for the hospitality." His tone was condescending, as if he were the mature adult in a situation created by an irrational Patrick. Claire looked between the two men, confusion and concern written across her face. "Patrick? Evan? What happened?" "Nothing serious," Evan said before Patrick could respond. "Just a difference of perspectives. See you Monday morning, Claire. We have that important meeting with the San Francisco client, remember? At 7. He briefly touched her shoulder, another invasion of personal space Patrick mentally logged, and left. The Tesla pulled out of the driveway with a silent electric hum. Claire turned to Patrick, the tiramisu still in her hands. "What the hell just happened?" Patrick waited until he was sure Evan was far enough away. Then he told her everything, the inappropriate comments, the boundary violations, the insinuations, and finally the veiled threat about her career. As he spoke, he watched Claire's expression cycle through several stages: confusion, disbelief, and then something that surprised him, recognition. As if pieces of a puzzle she hadn't known existed were suddenly clicking into place. He's always been very complimentary," Claire admitted, setting the dessert on the table with trembling hands. "I thought it was just his way, enthusiastic, motivating. But those late-night dinners," she paused, processing. "He always insisted we needed to work late. Alone. Said others didn't have the level of commitment I did. I thought it was professional. That it was because I was good at my job." Patrick's heart ached. Claire was starting to see the manipulation. "You are excellent at what you do. But that has nothing to do with his compliments." He was creating forced intimacy. Claire sat down, absorbing it. He scheduled 5 working dinners in the last 2 months. Always at romantic restaurants. Always insisted on paying, said it was a company expense. "I brought my laptop, but," she covered her face with her hands. "God, Patrick. I was so naive. You trusted your boss. You weren't naive, you were professional. He was the predator." Patrick knelt in front of her. "But we need to do something about this. He threatened you through me. This won't stop." Patrick walked to his office and grabbed his phone. 9:40 p.m. late, but Nicholas Hart had always been a night owl. Hart and Patrick had served together at Camp Lejeune in North Carolina in 2007, before Patrick deployed to the Middle East. Hart had left the Marines 2 years before Patrick, earned an MBA from Stanford, and built a meteoric career in advertising. When Horizon Creative opened its Portland office 3 years ago, Hart became regional CEO. He and Patrick occasionally met for beers and kept sporadic contact. Patrick dialed. 3 rings. "Morris, you crazy bastard, what kind of hour is this to call?" "Nick. I need you. It's about Horizon." Hart's tone shifted instantly, alert. "Go ahead." Patrick told him everything. Every detail. He omitted nothing: the comments, the touches, the veiled threat, the dinner dynamics. When he finished, there was silence on the other end. Patrick almost asked if the call had dropped, but then he heard Hart take a deep breath. "Patrick, you just handed me the final piece of a puzzle I've been assembling for 4 months." Hart's voice was hard, cold. "Evan Shaw. We have 3 HR complaints filed about inappropriate behavior. 3 different women. But they were subtle, you know. Comments, lingering looks, nothing we could definitively prove. He's smart. Never officially crosses the line. Always claims he was misunderstood." Hart paused. "But threatening your wife's career because her husband set boundaries? That's new. That's actionable." What are you going to do? I'm calling him. Right now. And tomorrow morning, he'll come to my office to clean out his desk. Claire doesn't need to worry about a thing. Not only will she keep her position, but I'll personally review her work to make sure promotions she deserved weren't blocked by that idiot. Nick, No. You gave me what I needed. Evan Shaw isn't just a problematic employee. He's a corporate predator. He creates emotional dependency, uses positional power to manipulate, and when he doesn't get what he wants, he threatens careers. This ends now. And Patrick? Hart paused. Thanks for looking out for Claire. And for calling me before handling it your way. I know the temptation was there. Patrick hung up and returned to the living room where Claire waited, hugging a pillow. Nicholas Hart is calling him right now. Evan's getting fired. But, my career. He said. Nick's got it covered. He told me there are other complaints against Evan. You're not the first, Claire. You're just the first who has a husband who knows the CEO. That night, Patrick and Claire talked until 3 a.m. She recounted all the little moments she'd normalized, the excessive compliments, the after-hours texts, the celebration invitations that always felt too intimate. Evan had carefully crafted a dynamic where Claire felt she owed him for her position, when in truth her talent and hard work spoke for themselves. Saturday morning, Nicholas Hart called Patrick. Evan Shaw no longer works for Horizon Creative. He argued. Threatened to sue. Mentioned his lawyers. So I mentioned the 3 prior complaints, plus your detailed account of last night, and the recording of our call where he clearly committed anticipatory retaliation. Hart sounded satisfied. He signed the termination agreement within hours. No severance bonus. His non-compete clause was reduced to only prevent him from approaching key clients over the next few months, enough to cut his influence. And the other women? The ones who complained before? We're reopening all cases. Officially. With an external investigation. If Evan did what I think he did, he created a manipulation pattern that affected careers, evaluations, promotions. We'll fix it all. Hart paused. And Patrick? Claire's being promoted to associate director. Not out of pity. Because when I reviewed her work from the past 18 months, I realized she should have been promoted a year ago. Evan was blocking it. Keeping her dependent on him. The following weeks brought revelations that shocked Horizon Creative. The external investigation found that Evan Shaw had built a sophisticated manipulation system. He'd identify talented female employees, usually married and high-performing, and begin a process of special mentorship. Excessive praise. Extended one-on-one hours. Small touches that could be denied. Then, subtly, he'd tie career opportunities to personal loyalty. 5 women came forward with stories similar to Claire's. All had believed they were privileged professionals granted special access to the director. All eventually realized they'd been manipulated. Some resisted and watched their careers mysteriously stall. Others left the company, convinced they weren't good enough. One developed severe anxiety and needed therapy. Claire found emails in the company system. Evan always used the corporate server, too arrogant to think he'd get caught, that revealed his pattern. We need to deepen our collaboration, he'd written to a junior designer. Your talent deserves individual attention. How about dinner to discuss your future here? I know a great Italian restaurant. To another, you've been shining lately. I want to make sure that's recognized in evaluations. Let's keep our alignment close, maybe we can meet outside the office for strategy? The pattern was clear and sickening. Evan never explicitly asked for anything sexual. He didn't need to. He created forced intimacy, made women feel indebted to him, and watched to see if any responded positively. When they didn't, he subtly punished them with less important projects, mediocre reviews, and denied promotions. It was sophisticated, calculated abuse of power. The Oregon Marketing Professionals Board opened an ethics case against Evan. 3 former employees filed civil lawsuits. His industry reputation was methodically destroyed. LinkedIn profile deleted. Professional website taken offline. Conferences cancelled his scheduled speaking engagements. In December, 2 months after the fateful dinner, Patrick and Claire were Christmas shopping when Claire suddenly stopped in front of a cafe. Through the window, sitting at a corner table, was Evan Shaw. He wore a uniform from a local call center, a blue polo shirt with the company logo, an ID badge in his pocket. He looked 10 years older. His once perfect hair was messy. His beard was uneven. He typed on an old laptop, staring blankly at the screen. Claire squeezed Patrick's hand. "It's him. I know. Should we go in?" Patrick looked at the man who months earlier had sat at his table and tried to destroy his marriage through manipulation and arrogance. The man who'd made multiple women doubt their own worth. The man who'd weaponized corporate power for personal gain. Now he was just a pathetic figure in a cafe, probably earning minimum wage taking complaints from frustrated customers. "No," Patrick said. "He's already gotten what he deserved. Our life is different now." And it was. Claire had flourished in her associate director role. She led a 12-person team, implemented ethics protocols to protect junior staff, and was negotiating to launch a new department. She came home by 6, had dinner with Patrick, and they spent evenings talking about their days, future plans, home renovations. Patrick had expanded his veterinary clinic, hired a young associate, and started offering pro bono services for veterans' pets, a project he'd always wanted to do. He and Claire were planning a spring trip to Italy, something they'd put off for years. On a Friday night in March, nearly 6 months after the dinner, Patrick was grilling steaks in the backyard when Claire came out with 2 glasses of wine. She hugged him from behind, resting her head against his back. "You know what I realized today?" she said. If you hadn't had the courage to confront Evan that night, I'd probably still be stuck in that toxic dynamic, thinking I needed to work late, accept inappropriate compliments, feel grateful for crumbs of recognition." She stepped around to face him. "You saved me from something I didn't even know I needed saving from." Patrick kissed her forehead. "You would have figured it out eventually. You're too smart not to see it. Maybe. But you sped up the process. And you did it without violence, without unnecessary drama. You just set boundaries. Protected our home. Our marriage. And then used your connections wisely." She smiled. "My strategic Marine." "Former Marine," Patrick corrected, smiling. "Once a Marine, always a Marine," Claire quoted the old saying. "And I thank God every day that you're my Marine." The next month, Patrick got a message from Nicholas Hart, remember Evan Shaw? He just got indicted. One of the women he manipulated at his previous company discovered he forged documents to block her promotion. Corporate fraud. If the case moves forward, he could face serious legal consequences, including professional restrictions and hefty financial penalties. Patrick didn't reply right away. He reread the message several times, processing it. Part of him, the part that still carried anger from that October night, felt satisfaction. But mostly, he just felt relief. Relief that the system had eventually worked. That men like Evan Shaw couldn't operate with impunity forever. He deleted the message and returned to the living room where Claire was watching a documentary about sea lions. He sat beside her, and she naturally nestled against him. Patrick realized he no longer thought about Evan Shaw. That chapter was closed. The man was irrelevant now, an error corrected, a problem solved. 3 years later, Patrick was at the clinic when a new client walked in. It was an adoption case, an older man wanting to adopt an 8-year-old golden retriever. As Patrick examined the dog, the man mentioned he worked in Horizon Creative's finance department. My wife works there, Patrick casually remarked. Claire Morris. She's executive director now. The man smiled. Oh, Claire. She's amazing. She's completely revolutionized the accounts department. We've got an open-door policy, structured mentorships, transparent evaluations. She implemented all of it. He petted the dog. I heard there was a rough period before she took over. Some abusive director who got fired. But that was before my time. It was, Patrick said simply. Long before. And it was true. That October dinner felt like another lifetime ago. The confrontation in the office, the call to Nicholas Hart, Evan Shaw's subsequent downfall, all were distant memories now, events that shaped the present but no longer defined it. Patrick finished the dog's exam, approved the adoption, and watched the man leave happily with his new four-legged companion. Through the clinic window, he could see the park where he and Claire walked on Sundays. He saw the life they'd built, solid, honest, rooted in mutual respect and healthy boundaries. That night over dinner, Patrick told Claire about the client from Horizon. She laughed. It's funny how that awful night ended up leading to the best changes. If Evan hadn't dined here, if you hadn't confronted him, if Nick hadn't investigated, I'd probably still be trapped in that toxic dynamic. Things happen for a reason, Patrick said, pouring more wine. No, Claire corrected him, things happen. And then people like you do something about it. That's the difference. Patrick smiled. She was right. That night, he could have stayed silent, let the discomfort pass, avoided confrontation. Many men would have. But years in the Marines had taught him that silence in the face of abuse isn't peace, it's complicity. Setting boundaries isn't aggression, it's dignity. And dignity, Patrick had learned, is the most important thing a man can protect, not just his own, but that of the people he loves. That October night, with Evan Shaw sitting at his table acting like he owned the world, Patrick chose dignity over convenience. And that choice changed everything. Years later, when people asked Patrick about that period, how he handled the situation, how he stayed calm, how he protected his marriage, he always gave the same answer: I recognized a threat. Acted quickly. Used available resources. And then let justice take its course. That's simple. No exaggerated heroics. No dramatic revenge. Just a man who knew his worth, knew his wife's worth, and refused to let an arrogant corporate predator redefine reality inside his own home. And in the end, that was enough. More than enough. Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates. See you next time.